News Today, hosted by Amber Rodriguez.
I'm Amber Rodriguez, hosting EWC Cultural News Today. I wanted to give you insight on a current issue involving the Native and Indigenous community and the United States Supreme Court with the federal case Howland v. Brackeen. In an attempt to adopt a Navajo and Cherokee boy with his half-sister, the Brackeens, a white Christian family in Texas, are challenging a law that's been in place since 1978 that governs Native children in state foster care. The Indian Child Welfare Act aims to prevent family separation among the Native community and prioritizes placing Native children into Native families and foster homes to reinforce the children's tribal identity and heritage. Take a look at these next pictures from the New York Times of the Brackeens family with the two children and the biological family. Note the difference between family culture and lifestyle. According to the New York Times, in 2018, a federal judge ruled in the Brackeens' favor, declaring that the Indian Child Welfare Act was unconstitutional, in part, he said, because it was based on race. The case has made its way to the Supreme Court that will be heard in October of this year, but now it has been consolidated to several other cases brought by the state of Texas, Louisiana, Indiana, and individual plaintiffs with the same argument that the policy is race-based and discriminates against non-Native parents looking to adopt. Tribes defending ICWA and other supporters expressed placement preferences are political, not racial. They also expressed if ICWA is overturned, it will have a negative consequences for Native rights and contribute to assimilation of Native communities. The ruling could potentially change the protection for Native children and families with a law that's been in place for over 40 years. And the United States has had a long, dark history of disregard to the Native community, especially with family relationships and children. In 1879, the federal government created Indian boarding schools in which Native children undertook mass assimilation of their culture. Their hair was cut, their names were changed, their language was unspoken, and all customs were stripped. Reported years of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse, along with other horrific acts, resulted in the deaths of Native children. According to AP News, at least 500 children died at such schools, but that number is expected to reach the thousands or tens of thousands as more research is done. The United States isn't the only country at fault for its mistreatment of Native children. AP News also reported that more than 150,000 Native children in Canada were forced to attend government-funded Christian schools from the 19th century until the 1970s in an effort to isolate them from the influence of their homes and culture. The aim was to Christianize and assimilate them into mainstream society, which previous Canadian governments considered superior. According to the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, after decades of abuse, on July 25th of this year, Pope Francis made an apology statement to the public about the Indian boarding schools. Pope Francis stated, "I myself wish to reaffirm this with shame and unambiguously. I humbly beg for forgiveness for the evil committed by so many Christians against the indigenous peoples." The Indian boarding 5% of Native children around the country were being taken from their homes, and that 85 to 95% of those kids ended up in non-Native homes or institutions. These statistics, along with the history of cultural genocide in Indian boarding schools, sparked ICWA to be formed in 1978 to recognize this mistreatment, abuse, and protect the best interests of Indian children by promoting the stability and security of tribes, Native families, as well. Assimilation and cultural genocide is not a new concept to the Native and Indigenous people. Their communities are still healing from their tragic losses of this past. Their communities are still healing from the tragic losses of this past and its remnants today. Some non-Native people